Hello everybody, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be covering Isagoge or Isagoge by Porphyry. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing his name wrong. But today we're going to be talking about species, which is one of the 5 predicables. And remember what I said in this last video, understanding this book or the 5 predicaments is very important to going on and understanding Aristotelian logic or Aristotle's categories. So let's get started. Now, species can be used to designate the shapeliness of an individual. And species is also said to be that which is under the defined genus. So species is just subordinate to genus. So for example, we say man and ox are the species of animal, right? Just as there is a species of bear, man is a species. And if you remember in the De Ente, from my De Ente notes, which I still have to continue by the way, genus is divided by species and their differences. Now, there are also some other examples which include white being a species of color. So remember that genus and species encompasses a broad variety of things, right? So color is a genus, where white, black, or whatever is a species of it. And triangle is a species of figure or shape, just as rectangle, right, or trapezoid. And genus is that which is essentially predicated of many things that differ in species. So the example I gave in the last video was that we could say that a man and a bear is an animal, right? And by animal, which is the genus, but they differ because they're 2 different species, and they have various differentiae. Now, if we define species by that which is under the defined genus, it seems that we must define each in terms of the other, because the genus is a genus of something, but the species is also the species of something. However, the Peripatetics, that is Aristotle's school, define species as what is ordered under genus and what the genus is predicated of essentially. The Peripatetics also noted that species is predicated essentially of many things which differ in number. So what does that even mean, right? So going back to genus, right? Because genus is what is essentially predicated of many things but differ in species. So that just means that animal is predicated of man and bear, but man and bear differ, right? Because man is a rational animal. And going on to species, like the term man, because man is a species, we could say that Socrates and Aristotle is a man, but they differ in number, meaning they differ individually, right? They're not the same people. So although man can be applied to Socrates and Aristotle, they still are different from each other. And that's what Porphyry means here, by the way. And so the last definition will then define the lowest species, namely, what is a species? Only but the former definitions mentioned will apply to those classes which are not the lowest species. Now, this is explained by the fact that in each category, there are the highest classes, the lowest classes, and some category which is between the highest and lowest. And thus we say that there is a highest genus, and by the way, if you don't understand what I'm saying right now, this is going to be moving to the Porphyrian tree, which I made myself because I didn't like the online internet versions of it. So I made a version for you guys. I hope you like it. But thus we say there is a highest genus or a supreme genus, which there can be no other superior genus. Likewise, there is a lowest species where there can be no other subordinate species. Now, between the highest and the lowest species, there are some classes which are both genuses and species. Yes, you heard that right. Some things can be both a genus and species, but this is between the highest genus and the lowest species. And now note that the lowest species is not a genus, by the way. Just as the highest genus is not a species, the lowest species is not a genus. Okay? So don't get confused on that. Now note that this is where we get to the famous concept, as I've mentioned, the Porphyrian tree. And so let's start with the highest genus, or category, which even Aristotle even said in the categories, right? If you remember my notes on the categories, which I have to do again because I didn't like the translation. But substance. Substance is the most primary fundamental genus. And under substance, it's going to be divided by body, and under body we have animate body, And under animate body, let's say we have animal. And under animal, we have rational animal. And under animal, we have man. And under man, we have the individual Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, etc. And of these, we have substance, which is only a genus, and as I have mentioned, that the lowest species is only a species and not a genus. So this is my version of the Porphyrian tree. So substance is the highest genus, but it's only a genus. It's not a species, right? And we have the two species of the genus, as I've labeled, which is the immaterial substance or material substance. And the material substance breaks down into body, which is a species of substance, and is the genus of animate body. And animate body is a species of body, but it is a genus of animal. And animal is a species of the genus animate body, but it's the genus of rational animal, right? Because rational animal is just man, by the way. It's just, man, which is a species of animal. And rational animal is a species of animal, but it's also a genus of man. And man is a species of rational animal, but is not a genus of particular man. Because remember what Porphyry said, right? The highest genus is only a genus, but not a species. And likewise, the lowest species is only a species and not a genus. And then it boils down into individuals, in which there is no other furthermore breaking down there. Alright, let's move on. You guys can also search up the online version of the Porphyrian tree if you want, but I just decided to make my own. And Boethius also comments, and he says, of the substance is the highest genus, and it is a genus only, while man is the lowest species, and it is a species only. Body is a species of substance, but a genus of animate body. Animate body is a species of body, but a genus of animal. Animal is a species of animate body, but a genus of rational animal. Ignore the 30. Those I just took from the book. Now, rational animal is a species of animal, but a genus of man. And man is a species of rational animal, but it is not also a genus of particular man. It is a species only. Every species which is predicated immediately prior to individuals will be a species only, and never a genus. Just as then, substance is the highest because there is nothing superior to itself, and is the highest genus. So too man is a species after which there is no species, nor anything able to be divided into species. Now, we've already established that substance is the highest genus because nothing else is superior to it. It is that which is predicated and not predicated of something. Likewise, man is the lowest species and nothing is subordinate to it, where there is nothing else to be divided into species, because Aristotle is not a species, right? The intermediate classes will be species of the prior classes, but the genera of posterior. So if you remember on the Porphyrian tree, the classes in the middle between the highest genus and the lowest species, they're both a genus and a species. Well, they're a genus of the species under them, or the classes under them, and they are species of the classes that are above them. And so consequently, these intermediaries have two relations, where intermediate classes are both species of what comes before and the genuses of what comes after. And the extremities, which is just means highest and lowest, they only have one relation. So the highest genus is related to the classes under itself, well, because it's the highest, right? But it's not related and has no relation at all with prior classes. Why? Because it is the highest. That is why substance only has a one-way relation, while the intermediate classes has a two-way relation, meaning that substance is only related to prior classes because it's the highest, but there's nothing preceding it, right? Just like the lowest species, it has nothing subordinate to it or after it, but it has something before it, like, over it in the Porphyrian tree, if that makes sense. Now, the lowest species, like I've said, also just has one relation. And we call the lowest species a species of individuals because it contains them, and also because a species of prior or higher classes contains them. Thus, the highest genus is not a species, and the lowest species is not a genus. And the lowest species is also defined as that which cannot be divided further into species and what is essentially predicated of many things differing in number. And differing in number, remember I've said, just means individuals, right? Socrates and Aristotle can be both called man, yet they differ individually, right? Because they're not the same people. Now, the species intermediate between the extremes are called the subordinate genus and species, and each are called a genus and species because of their relation, as I've said, to the highest and lowest. And thus, as Porphyry puts it, the species prior to the lowest species will rise up to the highest genus are called both genera and species, as well as subordinate genera. Note that genera just means genus here. Now, Porphyry notes carefully, which is a very important note. Well, it brings up a lot of debate as well. Being, or esse, which is just being in Latin, right? Or existence, is not one common genus of all things, nor are all things of the same genus because of one highest genus, as Aristotle knows. So, what does that mean? Well, it means existence cannot be a genus. Why? Because a genus, right, a genus is divided by species, right? So it would need a difference to divide it into species. But there's no possible difference that you could really apply to the concept of being without existence including it in the concept of being itself, if that makes sense. So basically, existence cannot be a genus because any difference that tries to divide up the genus of being still has being, right? So you can't really divide being. Being is the most simplest thing, if that makes sense. Even that's affirmed in Thomism, that being is the most simple thing. Now, let's talk about the 10 categories from Aristotle, or 10 primary genera as 10 primary sources, right? As you know, substance is the primary genus, and the others are called the 9 accidents. If a person were to name all things as beings, he would name homonymously or equivocally, meaning same name but they're said in different senses and not synonymously or univocally. If being was one common genus of everything, then all things would be called beings synonymously or univocally or in the exact same sense, which is false. Although the 10 primary genera share only the name and not a definition. So, for example, if being was univocal, everything could be said to exist in the same sense, but that's not true, right? Because substance have primary existence, but accidents only have accidental existence. For example, we say white man. White only has existence or relative existence in reference to substance, right? Because accidents presuppose substance, but not the other way around. So while there are 10 highest genus and countless or indefinite, but not infinite lowest species, individuals below the lowest species are infinite because they vary because, remember, they're individuated. They're individuals. And here's a quote from Categories. When things have only a name in common and the definition of being which corresponds to the name is different, they are called homonymous, which just means equivocal, which is translated by Boethius, right? Remember Boethius? Remember from the Consolation of Philosophy, one of my favorite books. But yeah, he commented on this. And so when things have the name in common and the definition of being which corresponds to the name is the same, they are called synonymous. And synonymous is translated as univocal by Boethius. Now, this was a good topic to bring up because scholastics clash with each other on the univocity of being, especially the Scotus and Thomists. So a common argument against the univocity of being is that if being is univocal, then we risk being into a genus. But being is not a genus, and therefore being is not univocal. But obviously, there is more fundamental arguments to get to. And I believe, maybe you guys hopefully can correct me, but even though Scotus believed in the univocity of being, he did not believe that being was a genus. He believed being is a univocal term, but not a genus. Okay, so let me just clarify that. And so Porphyry also brings up Plato and Plato's method of division. And so, which is you start off with the highest genus and then you descend to the lowest species and to stop. To descend through the intermediary species and to divide by specific differences. And Plato says, thus leave the individuals alone because there is an infinite of them. So, there's an infinite amount of men, right? There could be. And there can be no knowledge of them. Why? Because these are particulars. Remember, in Plato's philosophy, knowledge is of the forms, not the particulars. So when we descend from the highest genus to the lowest species, we divide multiplicity. But when we ascend to the highest genus, we collect the multiplicity into one, or unity. Species and genera unify diversity into a single nature, while individuals divide unity into multiplicity. Many men share in one species and are thus said to be one. But that one species appears multiple through its particulars. So basically, species and genus unite individuals, but individuals multiply the species, or the multiplicity, right? And so the singular divides and the universal unifies. So genus is one while species is many, because genus divides into species, but the genus is always essentially predicated of the species and all the higher of the lower. Species aren't predicated of their proximate, which just means nearest genus, nor higher genus. Thus, as Porphyry puts it, there is no convertibility of genus and species, for equals must be predicated of equals, as neighing of horse, or the greater of the lesser, as animal of man, but never the lesser of the greater. So the genus and every higher genus up to the highest is necessarily predicated of everything the species is predicated of. So what does this mean? For example, if I say Socrates is a man, and because man is a species of animal, we could thus say that Socrates is an animal and that Socrates is a substance. So same way I could say a horse is a substance, right? And the rule is the higher is predicated of the lower. So it's kind of like a hierarchy, if that makes sense. And so species is predicated of the individual, thus the genus is predicated of the species, and likewise the individual. And only the species applies to all individuals, while the individual term applies to just one. For example, things like Socrates or Aristotle, these are individuals because their unique traits can't belong to another. They're individuated, if that makes sense. And each thing is composed of a collection of characteristics which can never be the same for another. And that's by Porphyry, by the way. And that's why the characteristics of Aristotle or Plato cannot be the same for any other particular man. But when we consider man in common, then the characteristics of man would be the same for many, since all particular men as men. Thus we say that the individual is contained by the species contained by the genus. And the genus is thus then a kind of whole, and the individual a part. But the species is both a whole and a part, right? Because it's in the middle. That is, it's a part of another and a whole in others. It's a whole in the individual, but is a part of genus. And that's why we say that the whole is in the parts. So recap, basically for today. What is the highest genus? Substance. What is the lowest species? Man. Can the highest genus be a species? Absolutely not. It is only a genus. Can the lowest species be a genus? Absolutely not. It is only a species. Which genera and species are the same? The intermediates between the extremes, which are the highest, the extremes are the highest genus and the lowest species. The intermediate classes between those extremes are both genus and species. It's a genus of what comes after it, but a species of what is before it. And what are individuals? Individuals are parts of a species that differ in number and multiply that species. And that's basically it for this video. If you guys have any questions in the comments, please let me know. Thank you for watching.